Hi, and welcome to the Frog Pond School of Design, where we talk about things that are important to architecture and people who enjoy architecture. And today, I don't know why it took me so long, we're going to talk about the word design. I mean, what is more important to the practice of architecture than design? So I decided to look it up in my unabridged Sturgis Dictionary of Architecture and Building. Let's say unabridged. This is one volume of 3, so it's a pretty sizable dictionary. It comes from 1901, 1902, when it was published at this point. So I looked up design and was kind of shocked to find 6 full pages on the word design. But let me read you the very first couple lines and the basic definition. It says, the art and practice of so arranging forms and colors, or objects having form and color, that there are reached certain definite results intended to be agreeable to the eye and to embody some idea of the designer. Fundamental definition of the term design. Then he goes on to talk about the origin of the word, and it is tied into the Latin through the French, Spanish, and Italian words. In Italian, the verb is designare, which really means drawing. Now that's kind of unfortunate, because it puts the emphasis on lines on paper and that sort of thing, rather than creating, which is, according to him, what design is all about. And of course, this is an architectural dictionary, so it emphasizes that, but he does acknowledge that it goes much beyond architecture. And he uses an example, a locomotive. You can design a locomotive, and but the term design in this sense has much more to do with envisioning and creating than it does actually drawing. So that's kind of an unfortunate tie in there. So he goes on to talk about the practice of designing different kinds of buildings and the considerations that have to be taken into effect or into account in residential design, for instance. You might arrange a room so that the elements relate to one another properly. In a bedroom, maybe you don't want to see the bed first thing when you walk in the room, but the location of, like, the window, for instance. You want the light and the air from the window, but sometimes you don't want it too close over. He talks about arranging all these components, and then goes on to acknowledge, and this is an important fact, you do all that, but it also has to relate to the outside. If you just arrange those windows in the rooms, it may be chaotic on the outside, so you have to coordinate all those efforts. He goes on then to talk about different kinds of buildings, banks, and the relationship between the teller window and the vault, and the customers coming in and who they see, that sort of thing. All these issues that are involved in fundamental design. Finally ends up by saying, the real purpose of our art is the expressive use of materials for the satisfaction of worthy needs. Kind of a pretty good definition. In the meantime, though, in through there, various considerations were mentioned. Proportion. We've talked about proportion here in this forum, where it helps things look right, to have proper proportions. He mentions what he calls the dogma of symmetry. That's kind of interesting, because symmetry can really get in the way of composition, which is another major factor involved here. Durability, adaptability, tradition possibly is taken into account here. Proper use of materials is critical. And we may get into this in an upcoming video to talk about Vitruvius and what he had to say about designing architecture. So interesting, and comes down to the last word I have on my list of considerations here is beauty. You don't hear that a lot anymore relative to architecture, but it's there. So thanks for joining us today on the Frog Pond School of Design. I hope to see you hanging around the pond again real soon.